Hello, I'm Cody Whipple with the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. Welcome back to our Making Connections series of videos. This video is going to be all about habitat. So when I talk about making connections, I'm talking about how you can take everything that's going on in a natural ecosystem or the natural stream setting like we have here and linking it back to what you are doing with your aquarium. So the first habitat component that I'm going to talk about is the stream substrate. When I say substrate, I'm talking about what makes up the bottom of the stream. In your aquarium, you're going to put a lot of different sized rocks and cobble and stones in there to provide your trout with the adequate habitat that they need. That's going to make them feel comfortable. It's also going to give them some places to rest and maybe escape the current that you're setting up in your aquarium. So if you look at the natural stream habitat that we have here, you'll notice that there's a lot of different sizes to the substrate right around us right now. You'll see some bigger boulders, some big cobble. You also see some smaller stuff. So the smaller stuff is really, really important. So when you're looking at the egg basket in your aquarium, remember you're trying to mimic sort of a trout red. You're making sure that you spread all the eggs out. You're making sure that they're getting a lot of water around them so that they have a lot of water. Also, you might notice some of your eggs can miss the egg basket or fall out of the egg basket and they might make it to the bottom of your aquarium. That's why you want to have some of that smaller, more fine substrate in your aquarium as well. Stuff like this. It's nice and clean. There's not a lot of sediment around it. It would provide a nice place for those trout eggs to fall into all those little spaces and be protected while they're actually in the stream. So the next component of habitat that I'm going to talk about is all about trees. Trees provide a number of different benefits for the actual stream itself. One we already talked about when we were talking about dissolved oxygen and how the leaves help block that sunlight, providing that stream with a lot of shade, keeping that water cold, helping it retain more dissolved oxygen. Well, in the fall, those leaves, they're going to fall. A lot of them are going to make it into the stream. That's going to provide a lot of food and a lot of nutrients for aquatic macroinvertebrates, and that actually helps start to initiate energy transfer in the food web, which we'll talk about again in another video. The tree itself can actually fall into the stream, and that's going to be in the form of woody debris. That provides a lot of habitat, a lot of cover. Also, like the leaves do, it provides nutrients, and it gives those trout a place where they can hide, rest, helps them avoid predation. Trees also help in terms of stabilizing the stream bank. If you look right over here, you'll notice all of the roots that are helping to keep that stream bank together, keeping all of that sediment from ending up into the waterway and ultimately into the whole watershed. Those tree roots also help serve as a safety net, and they can actually trap a lot of harmful nutrients before they would actually make it into the stream as well. You'll often notice that even when a stream's going through a farm field, there'll be some trees on the side. That's what's called a riparian buffer, and those are really important in helping to keep Pennsylvania's waterways cold and clean. So the next habitat component that I'm going to talk about is all about your aquarium flow and how you can make connections between the flow you set up in your aquarium to what you might experience with natural stream flow on one of Pennsylvania's waterways. So when you set up your aquarium, you want the trout to be able to experience different currents throughout different areas of the aquarium, and those currents are going to be at different velocities. That's going to provide some diversity in their habitat just through flow alone. When you set up your aquarium, you're going to set up the filter outflow down at one end, and as we mentioned before in another video, it's going to be above the surface of the water. As the water comes out of that outflow, it's going to push water across the surface of your aquarium. That's going to provide flow at the surface. Then the intake of your filter is down near the bottom on the opposite end of your aquarium. That's going to pull that water down towards the bottom of your aquarium. Whatever water doesn't go back in the inflow and out to your filter gets pushed across the bottom of your aquarium at some significant velocity across that substrate through your power head. That's why we have that power head set up down there. It then comes down to the opposite end of the aquarium, gets pushed back up towards the surface by the air stone. And that's what's going to kind of help that water circulate throughout your aquarium continuously. And you'll be able to see where all those different currents and what the velocity of those currents are, just based on the behavior of your trout, because they will orient themselves so that they're facing head on into that current. The reason they do that is because they need that water to come directly into their mouth and out their gill so they can properly breathe the dissolved oxygen that's in your aquarium. You'll notice some trout might orient themselves straight up and down right above the air stone, because they'll learn that that's a great place for them to actually get dissolved oxygen. So I mentioned diversity in your flow in your aquarium. Trout that occur naturally in the stream also require diversity in their flow, and that's where we introduce the concepts of riffles, pools, and runs. So right here we have a great example of a riffle. You'll notice the water velocity is fairly high right here. There's a lot of aeration and the water is fairly shallow. That might imitate exactly what your power head is trying to do near the bottom of your aquarium when it pushes that water at some higher velocity right across the substrate. We then come into some water that's fairly deeper. This is what we call a run. It does provide some more habitat, and the fact that that depth provides more area and more space for those trout to live in also has some fairly quick velocity through a run as well. So the run is just a little bit deeper when you compare it to the riffle that we already looked at up here. So in terms of depth, a pool is deeper than a run, and a run is deeper than a riffle. So with that deeper water comes some slower moving velocity to the actual current or the actual flow of the stream. Oftentimes there's things right in the pool that are helping to create the pool. They're also helping to provide trout with some cover and a place to rest. Right here in this pool, we've got an awesome root wad from a sycamore tree that's right in the middle of the stream. And you can actually see how it's slowing down the velocity of the current directly behind it. That's a great place for the trout to rest and conserve their energy. When they feel like they need to grab a bite to eat, they can come out, get a bite to eat, head right back into that slower moving water, save their energy, grow bigger, so you can come down to the stream and catch some really big trout. That's why when you put rocks or other big components directly into your aquarium, you're simulating what happens in the pool type of habitat directly in the stream. So Pennsylvania has a lot of great things occurring naturally that help protect the water quality, that help keep the water cold and clean for the trout, for aquatic macroinvertebrates, and ultimately the watershed as a whole. And if you've got great water quality in your watershed, you're also going to have healthy water for your community as well. So that's really important. If you look around me just right now, we've got some great woody debris that's in the stream. We've got some rocky, rubbly stream banks, which is going to help prevent all of that sediment from getting into the water. We've also got a good riparian buffer in the form of all of these young sycamore trees over here, whose roots are helping to preserve and stabilize that stream bank. But the key thing to notice about those sycamore trees, and actually about all of the trees in the area that we're currently standing in, is that they are fairly young. So in the late 1800s, the area that we're standing in, and a lot of Pennsylvania as well, was completely deforested. All right, so think about a landscape that's just completely barren of trees. During storms, during flooding and high water events, all of that sediment now has the opportunity to get into that stream and degrade the water quality. And we're currently in the Susquehanna watershed, which is going to lead directly to the Chesapeake Bay. We're still seeing some of the effects of those actions today. So the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission has a whole division that's dedicated to improving Pennsylvania streams, improving the habitat, ultimately improving the water quality. So they'll come in, see if a stream is degraded, and there's all kinds of structures that they can put into that stream to help it along so that you can get the same effects as what would occur naturally in a healthy waterway.